Welcome to the Nonprofit Sidekick Podcast. Changing the world is hard work, and nonprofit leaders are wearing all the hats while herding all of the cats, and it can get really lonely. You could use a sidekick.
We think of ourselves as your partners in mastering the unique balancing act of nonprofit leadership. Our goal is to provide insights, coaching, and direction for nonprofit leaders, both the heart and soul of nonprofit leadership and the nuts and bolts of nonprofit management. We're your hosts, Wendy Bertner
And Stephanie Masters. Welcome back to the Nonprofit Sidekick Podcast. Today's episode's going to be all about strategy. Strategy, we're going to start with, okay, you've written a strategic plan. Now what?
I love that because so many people think of strategy as ending at the strategic plan.
It's done.
It's done. We are done with our strategy. Let's keep going. And I think today we're not going to talk a lot about planning. That's maybe another episode. We'll talk about how to actually do strategic planning. But I think, we do want to talk about how do you not end with a strategic plan. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
So what we see so much of is there's so much time investment in developing the strategic plan.
Mm-hmm.
There's planning meetings, there's iterations, and then maybe it's even laminated at the end. And then what happens is you put it on a shelf and nobody ever talks about it again.
Yeah.
So this episode is about once it's done and it's laminated, what do you do with it?
Yeah. So let's talk about the board level. Let's start there. Assuming that you have a board that was part of your strategic planning process, they might know what's in the strategic plan. But let's just for a minute say they don't know. Because a lot of times I talk with executive directors and they're like, yeah, I'm putting together my strategic plan for next year. I think that's great. You don't necessarily need this big, huge thing. So let's start with the board. First, you want to communicate it with the board. What's the best way, do you think, Steph, to communicate to the board your strategic plan?
I think it goes back to tying it to the mission and breaking it down. I think so many organizations and especially boards think that, okay, now it's done. Let's do all of it.
Right. We have to do it all.
We have to do all of it. And we have this burnout that happens, or there's a lot of chaos that happens because everyone is diving in on these specific things, and it's maybe not really supporting the cause.
Yeah. So I think communicating to the board ongoing is one of the things I want to talk about too, is that it's not just, okay, we have a strategic plan. Here it is. Any questions? Great. Moving on. We're going to talk about finances now or something. It's really integrating it in every board meeting, every single board meeting. And you do that by integrating it into the work that you're doing every day and the finances and everything you're doing. Your strategic plan or your strategy hits on every piece of that. And it should be part of that. So if there are changes, you want to make them, but you also want to communicate them and make sure that everybody understands where the organization is going now.
And it could be done in terms of creating action plans. So and even project plans can come out of this, is that if you look at, our recommendation is like a 3-year plan's a solid plan because so much changes over that time and you have to be flexible and agile. So it's focusing in on what can be done now, what can be done soon, and then what's going to be more long-term. And I think defining those action plans looks at first, what are some of the milestones that we want to achieve? Yeah. So what's showing the progress of where we're going, but then what's the goal?
Yep.
And how do we capture that? What reporting comes along with that? What's the impact that comes along with that? And I think so much of the strategic plan gets lost because people aren't creating these clear, actionable, concise tasks, responsibilities to tie it back to the plan.
And I heard you say timeline.
Oh, yeah.
So when do we want to have this? And there can be benchmarks along the way. And I heard you say impact. So how are we measuring our success in that particular strategy? Is it just, if it's a fundraising strategy, did we add more donors to the database? Did we add more dollars to the bank account? Whatever those kind of measurable evaluation pieces are for the strategy. So I heard you saying that's really important. And then there was a third thing that I just forgot that you said. And now I can't remember it. What were you talking about?
Milestones and goals.
And goals. How the goals are attached to the measurements, but goals can also be a little bit bigger than that. So there are going to be measurements under your goal. That's going to be important. But I think for a board and staff, it's really important to know those three things: that the timeline of when are we going to do these things, what's our ultimate goal, what's the point, and then how do we know when we're successful. So that's the evaluation piece of it. Thank you, bringing those three back, nice and concise.
As your strategic plan should be.
Right. So let's talk about that's the board. The board's going to monitor those things for each of your strategies, and that's a great way to make sure that they remember and understand what the strategies are and where you're going. But for staff, that needs to be a little bit. There needs to be a little bit more behind it when you want to get the staff on board and building the strategic plan into what they're doing every day.
Yeah. Anytime that an organization decides to do a new strategic plan, there's some transformation that happens within both the nuts and bolts and the heart and soul side of this.
Yep.
So this is not a sexy topic, but I'm going to talk about job descriptions. So job descriptions, I know everyone's like rolling their eyes now, but every time you do a strategic plan, there should be an evaluation of the job descriptions. Do the job descriptions actually talk about the actions and the outcomes that tie back to the mission of the organization? If the answer is no, it's time for you to do a new iteration of the job descriptions. And this is making sure that we're measuring the things that matter and that there's absolute alignment between what the staff is focusing on and why they're focusing on it, and how does it achieve the greater vision of the organization. It has to be actionable, it has to be measurable, and we have to be able to talk about either the qualitative or the quantitative result of the action.
And who's leading that action or who's supporting that action. I think that's really important too, that you talked about job descriptions, that if you have this whole big strategic plan that makes major changes or adds certain things to what you do every day, but you don't go back and make that part of your staff, it's not going to get done because nobody thinks it's their responsibility to do it, particularly with changes.
Yeah. And with so many clients that we're interacting with right now, one of the things that we are starting to see is that job descriptions are morphing into, okay, Wendy's doing this job. Wendy's strengths are these. This is what Wendy wants to do. So I'm going to write the job description because you're the awesome person doing it. And what we're seeing is that there are these major gaps in certain job functions, responsibilities, and outcomes for the strategic plan that are taken out of it because we're focusing more on the person versus the role.
Right.
And so being able to separate the two is really important. So we have to look at the job descriptions have to be aligned to the plan. So within the framework of the organization, each of the job descriptions have to come back up to who are we serving? Why are we serving them? How do we do it? How are we measuring it? And what's the impact?
Yeah. And that sounds really complicated, but it's not.
Right.
I mean, it really is when it gets down to it, it's paying attention. And so it's making sure that the strategic plan isn't on the shelf getting dusty. It's taking the pieces, parts of that and putting them in the right place. Who owns what, who's doing what, in order for the strategic plan to be successful. It's complicated, but basic at the same time.
It is. And it can start as simply as the executive director sitting down with the team and saying, let's talk through the strategic plan. You all were hopefully a part of the process. You had input, you had insights. Now what we need to do is look at how it impacts the way that we work.
Yeah.
And it could be a series of conversations, let them know what's happening. The clearer that we are, the more transparent in how we talk about these organizational transformations to achieve the strategic plan, the better off we are.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And then we want to carry that out. So we've had the conversation, we've changed the job descriptions. We know kind of who's doing what, But then at staff meetings moving forward or your one-on-ones moving forward, you want to make sure you're touching back to that you don't fall into old habits. And so every time I have a one-on-one with this staff person, this is what we're talking about. You need to intentionally begin to say, okay, what about that? And really bring it in to the conversation. Again, getting it off the shelf, not letting it get dusty. This is how you activate it.
It's laminated. You can use it in every conversation. I'm a big fan of laminators.
I know. I've heard of executive directors laminating the one-pager placemat strategic plan and bringing it out at every board meeting.
Yeah.
And that's your placemat at the board meeting. So that's another way to put it in front of them.
Yeah, whatever. Well, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, is that the more that it's present, so whether it's, something that's posted at the top of meeting minutes, if it's something that's posted, somewhere locally within the office, always bringing it back to it. It makes sure that people are tied to where people are going.
Yeah. And I know this is one of your favorite topics, spreadsheets, but
love them.
When you have these specific goals from your strategic plan, take them and put them into some sort of dashboard, which is, to me, it's a spreadsheet. I know there's some software out there that you can use, but to me, it's the simplest thing is spreadsheet. Okay, we built a spreadsheet based on the strategic plan. But again, we have to talk about it. We have to communicate it. And just a hint, at first, staff might not get it. They might not, they're going to have to take time to adjust to it. How do I fill in this number? What are we actually tracking? Oh, we said we were going to serve this many people, but we have this weird event that we do. And how does that fit in? Having those conversations and making sure you're figuring that out along the way, number one, helps people understand how you're doing this, why you're doing it, why you're measuring certain things. But then you start to have those data points ongoing. It's not just at the end of the year. Now we're scrambling to say, okay, we had this goal for this year to serve X number of people in this way. We haven't been tracking it. So developing that dashboard, that way of tracking your forward movement on your strategic plan, whatever that looks like, to me, it's a spreadsheet, I think is really important.
It is. And it creates brand ambassadors for the organization, that if you have this dashboard that speaks to the progress and the movement of the organization on the plan, think about the power of that when each of these either staff members or board members are able to have those conversations within the community. And so it's being able to say, this is what we're doing this year, and this is the impact. And so what it does is it creates this really clear, brand and celebration, and people have pride in knowing that they're working towards the greater good. I think smaller organizations are always running so fast. Everybody wears all of the different hats. And sometimes we lose sight of why are we doing this? And what are the steps that we need to take to get there? And the strategic plan and the implementation of it is, how do you build it into your culture?
Yeah. And tracking it, I've actually seen that happen too, where before we had this dashboard and the strategic plan and we had these goals and measurable outcomes and all of that, it would be like, hey, we're doing this really nice thing. Isn't this nice? We have this great mission and it's so nice. After that, even just 6 months after that, when we actually had some data to support it, I heard board members not only telling the stories of the people that we were helping or impacting, but then they had data. We had 45 people that did this thing, this wonderful thing. And here's a story of one of them. It gives your ambassadorship that little punch up, where it's not just like oh, I'm on this board and we do this nice thing. Oh, that's nice. You can actually give them a little more to bite into and really want to get to know the organization better.
Absolutely.
So it helps with marketing, fundraising, all of those things. All right. We talked about creating a dashboard and why that's really important, and to visit it regularly. Make sure you're keeping it up every month, every week, however your activities go. And you're reporting that out to the board and staff. Everybody should know where that dashboard is and how to get that information. But the last thing that we wanted to talk about when it comes to strategy is slowing down to go fast. Take the time to think through your strategy. So you have it, and we're not talking about doing the planning. You have it. Now, how do you implement and track it? And we want to encourage you to slow down a little bit at first.
Yeah. I mean, it's planning the implementation of the strategic plan.
Yeah.
And how do you integrate it into what you're already doing? I think so many leaders think this, you're just adding one more thing to my plate. And that's not really the case. The case is, how do you integrate it into what we're already doing? So when leaders are partnering with board chairs and planning for the monthly or bi-monthly or quarterly meeting, what are the things that need to be included? How are we leveraging the dashboard? When we look at leading internally within the organization, it's how do we lead the one-on-ones? How do we do coaching and development? How do we lead the team? How are we assessing and measuring along the way? Appreciation and recognition of what's being done. So I like to explain that appreciation and recognition are two different things. Appreciation is about the journey and it's about the effort that you put in to achieve the goal. Recognition is when you hit that milestone or goal. So appreciation is about the work to get there. And the recognition is absolutely about, hey, great job. Let's celebrate this. Let's talk about the impact of it. And if we continually do that, it becomes a part of our culture. And this is also where we talked about job descriptions. I know, super sexy. So I'm going to talk about the other one that everyone loves, and that's the performance review. Yeah.
The worst.
Yeah. Wait, do I have to do those?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you do.
The performance reviews should be tied back to celebrating each and every person's effort towards the work of the strategic plan, which again is included in their job description. And if we do that, people feel deeply connected to it. They understand the value and the investment in actually doing a strategic plan. And they get more excited about, all right, we did this. We're going to do it again in 2 to 3 years. I have a vested interest in being a part of that process.
Yeah, I can clearly see how I am. And I want to continue to be that way. Yeah. So I think the one takeaway from today's episode that I'm hearing us talk about is it's up to you, right? Don't complain that strategic plans end up on the shelf gathering dust. It's on you. And I'm talking to all of you, not any one particular person. It really is. Don't stop at, okay, we have a plan. That's the deliverable, but keep going. Okay, how are we going to take this plan? How do we work it into job descriptions? How do we work it into a dashboard? How do we communicate it? There's all kinds of other plans that come out of that strategic plan. So you want to slow down a little bit and make sure all of those things are happening and you know who's going to do what. And you'll see the results of that strategic plan. And it won't be, oh, this was a waste of time and money and it's just sitting on the shelf gathering dust.
Yeah. And leaders don't have to think about all of this on their own. No. If you look at a giant strategic plan, it can be really overwhelming. So find the people who are your executors, the people who are like, yes, it's done. Let's look at it. Let's figure out how to put it into place, and pick the people who are going to help you chunk it out and do it into manageable bits to be able to actually integrate it into what you're already doing.
Yeah. So I think we made a really effective case to how strategic plans can actually help you fundraise.
And also lead a great culture where people understand their connection to the work that's happening.
And it takes internal and external communications and to make it really work.
Yeah. And Nonprofit Sidekick also helps with the implementation of strategic plans. So call us. We'll help you.
We're here to help.
Thanks so much for joining us today. If you need more information or would like to work with us, check out our website at nonprofitsidekick.com.